Another very important story coming in from the other big conflict that we are keeping a close watch on, which is the West Asia crisis. The nuclear debate, in fact, has now become even more and shifted, in fact, towards the possession of nuclear weapons in Iran, where they've said, and Iranian leadership is learned to have said, that if the West goes ahead with a threat to impose or reimpose all the UN sanctions, then the country will have to look at having a nuclear deterrent. That's what the foreign minister has said. These remarks come as Donald Trump is set to return to the White House come January the 20th. Meanwhile, Iran is set to meet with Britain, France and Germany for talks on Friday on its nuclear program after the three governments joined the United States to have Tehran be censured by the UN atomic watchdog. Now, last week, the 35-nation Board of Governors of the UN's International Atomic Energy Agency adopted a resolution condemning Iran for its lack of cooperation on nuclear issues. Now, what does it mean going forward? Does this mean that the war is now entering a dangerous and a next phase? The fact that Iran is looking at having a nuclear option, or the fact that it's posturing by using the N word, does indicate that there could be some back and forth in terms of negotiations. Also, it could mean that between Israel and Iran, there could be fresh tensions, given that nuclear deterrence and nuclear program has been at the heart of the conflict and issue between Iran and Israel. Let's get in DP Srivastava, former ambassador of India to Iran, joining me on the broadcast. And we also have Zaki, Zaidi, who's a former researcher of IDSA. Thank you, gentlemen, for taking out the time. And in fact, let me start with you, Ambassador Srivastava. How do you see these latest statements coming in from Iran? They could be posturing, they could be negotiating tactics, but they also come at a time when the conflict is at a very dangerous moment.
I think let's start on a positive note. Immediately after the US election results came out, there was a meeting in New York between the Iranian PR and Mr. Elon Musk, who's it's well known, very close to President-elect. President-elect Trump has also said that he wants good relations with Iran, except that Iran cannot have nuclear weapons, which is exactly what the Iranian official position is. Now, given this context, there is hope that there could be a way forward. Tomorrow, they will be meeting with the E3 representatives, that is UK, Germany and France and Iran. Iranian statement, of course, is they had made similar statement last time around, and it must be remembered that they actually increased the enrichment level. That is, once the West withdrew from the deal. So you should not dismiss it completely, but at this stage, there is still scope for negotiations.
Mr. Zaidi, how do you see these fresh statements that have come in from Iran? There will likely be a response or a backlash from the other stakeholders as well. How do you read this situation?
Hi, thank you for having me on your show. To understand the current situation, probably we have to go back a few months back when Israel for the first time attacked Iranian consulate in Damascus. And this was Iran declared it as a red line that Israel breached. And from that time, Israel has continued to breach the Iranians that have set up the red line. It's with killing of Hassan Nasrallah, assassination of Ismail Haniya in Tehran while the inauguration of the new president was going on, and then the recent attacks on the nuclear installations and that Iran air defenses. So Iran is like faced with sort of a threat, like existential threat, that Iran is bearing the cost of having a nuclear weapon while actually not having it. So there is a public debate within Iran that Why not, if we are bearing all the cost and especially the US and the Europeans, they are not pressuring Israel to abide by the international laws as they saw in Gaza and Lebanon. So they think like possibly this is the only option. However, there is a fatwa of the supreme leader that forbids Iran to have a nuclear weapon, like according to their religious positioning. But when the government and the regime is threatened with the existential crisis, so they might have to exercise this option. There, from the another perspective, we can see that this is also a posturing that they are going to negotiate with the European powers and before Donald Trump assumes the presidency. So they are signaling that they are going to negotiate. They are open to negotiation, but with, in a better positioning.
Do you think it's prudent to explore these options right now ahead of a transition that's taking place in American administration and governance?
Iran is like, using the time period, what's having from today to till the President Trump takes office. And that they are signaling and trying to understand that what signal they might get from the US, that if they are open for negotiations, if they are open to renegotiate the JCPOA and nuclear deal. But from the Iranian perspective, after the assassination of especially Hassan Nasrallah and Netanyahu just yesterday said that we are now declaring a ceasefire with Hezbollah in Lebanon, and we are now going to focus more on Iran. So it is a veiled threat against Iran, and Iran has to, because it has lost on many fronts, like in Gaza, in Lebanon.
Nuclear weapons. Mr. Zaidi, Netanyahu didn't speak about nuclear weapons. So I'm just saying, and let me get in Ambassador Srivastava on this as well, which is that the war or the conflict right now is in a phase where efforts are being made, at least some ceasefire has happened, efforts are being made to try and see if there are possible negotiating options on the table for the other aspect of the conflict. Ambassador Srivastava, do you think in that situation, any such move could actually be a huge setback in talks and negotiations?
As Mr. Zaidi was pointing out, the provocation has come from Israel, not Iran. Iran has been very restrained. It was assassination, despite the assassination of Haniyeh on its home ground, an earlier assassination of Iranian diplomats and Iranian embassy in Syria, which is a third country. So this time also the timing has not been chosen by Iran. This has come in reaction to IAEA adopting a resolution against Iran. So you can look at it both ways. That is, Iran has upped the ante, or if you actually look at the background, it has been the EU which has upped the ante by bringing the resolution just at this stage, when there were some indications that both US and Iran were willing to talk to each other.
Okay, final word, Mr. Zaidi. According to you, what could be the next steps that the world needs to watch out for? Because it's a volatile situation. It's where there are many moving parts to it. In your assessment, what can be the top 2 or 3 things to really watch out for in this situation right now?
I think what concerns most, especially like the whole axis, especially the Iran, is it was a war in Lebanon that ended for the time being with the ceasefire, and they have for the time and again they have said the war in Gaza has to end. Iran foreign minister a few days back also mentioned that we are still in preparations to respond to Israel from its last attack, but we take into calculations its ceasefire in Lebanon and its possible ceasefire in Gaza. So we are like still have to see that how when Donald Trump takes presidency and if there is a possible ceasefire, because Trump has signaled that under his administration there will be
Yes.
no war. So we hope something positive will come up.
All right, I agree with Mr. Ambassador Srivastava. Let's end on a positive note with the hope that there could be some sort of a resolution to this conflict. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking out the time and speaking to me on India Global.